She was warned. She was told never to walk alone at night. But pride is a dangerous thing. And now, she is gone. No footprints, no screams, no struggle. Just an empty street and a whisper in the wind. The elders say the spirits have taken their due. But what if I told you this could happen again tonight? Turn off the lights. Listen closely, because after this story, you may never walk alone at night again. Nkechi was known for her sharp tongue and fearless nature. The daughter of Mama Ebele, the village midwife, she now carried her first child. Women praised her beauty and resilience, but whispered about her stubbornness. Nkechi did not believe in things she could not see. Warnings of elders, stories of spirits and rules passed down for generations. She dismissed them all as superstition. Her closest friend, Abeni, was different. Abeni respected the old ways. She had grown up listening to tales of spirits that roamed unseen but always watched. The old ones do not speak without reason, Abeni often said. Nkechi would only laugh. At the heart of the village sat Baba Jide, older than most had ever known. More than an elder, he was a storyteller, a keeper of forgotten wisdom. His words carried weight. Many listened, few obeyed. The spirits do not forget, he often said, and they do not forgive those who ignore them. He had seen generations come and go, seen foolishness take root in the young, and seen the price of ignoring tradition. Chief Durojaye understood the weight of the unseen. A wealthy livestock owner, he spoke only when necessary but watched everything. Lately, his goats had been restless, their eyes filled with something close to fear. They refused to drink from the stream after sunset. Dogs howled at empty air. The elders murmured. Chief Durojaye had seen such things before. He knew when something was coming. Despite whispers, the village was alive. Women balanced baskets of yams, traders called out prices, and children ran barefoot, their laughter ringing through the air. Yet beneath the joy there was always a whisper, a reminder of things better left undisturbed. Among these whispers was one warning, repeated time and time again. A pregnant woman must never walk alone at night. Nkechi had heard it all her life, and still, she did not listen. One afternoon, she overheard Baba Jide speaking to villagers. His voice was steady, his eyes dark with meaning. "There are things older than us, stronger than us," he said. "Rules that must not be broken." Abeni, tending to her mother's stall, smiled. "Baba Jide, you say that every day. If I didn't know better, I'd think you enjoy scaring us." The old man shook his head. "Ah, my child, if only fear was enough to keep people safe." At that moment, Nkechi approached, her belly leading the way. "Baba Jide, you worry too much," she said, laughing. "What spirit would dare come near me?" The old man studied her. "It is not you they seek, Nkechi," he said. "It is the child you carry," she scoffed. "I have heard these stories since I was a child. Pregnant women must not walk alone at night, they say. The spirits are watching, they say. But tell me, Baba Jide, has anyone ever seen these spirits?" His gaze did not waver. "The ones who see them do not return to speak of it." Abeni reached for Nkechi's hand. "Just be careful," she pleaded. "You know what they say about the river path at night." Nkechi only laughed, shaking her head. "Abeni, if spirits want to see me, let them come. I will greet them myself." The village was restless. Every night, the dogs barked and howled, their heads turned in the same direction as if they saw something the people could not. They barked at empty paths, silent trees, and shadows that stretched longer than they should. Their cries were sharp and urgent, like a warning no one understood. Chief Durojaye stood outside his compound, arms folded. His goats, usually eager for their evening drink, stood stubbornly at the edge of the stream. He clapped his hands, urging them forward. The animals shifted but did not move. Strange, he muttered. Very strange. That night the howling continued. The elders whispered. Mothers pulled their children inside before the last light faded. But Nkechi only laughed. "It is just dogs barking at the wind," she said. Mama Odzioma, the elderly midwife, shook her head. "You are a stubborn one, Nkechi. These things are not for laughter." Nkechi smirked. "Mama, you always have stories. When I was little, you told me spirits lived in the trees. Now you say they walk the night. Have you seen them?" The old woman sighed. "I have seen enough to know that when the dogs speak, we must listen." Nkechi waved her off and turned to Abeni, who stood quietly by her side. "And you, my friend, do you believe in ghosts?" Abeni hesitated. "I believe in things I do not understand." Nkechi rolled her eyes. "Then it is a good thing I understand everything." Later, as the night stretched on, Nkechi lay in bed, her hands resting on her belly. A gust of wind pushed against her window, rattling the wooden frame. She turned onto her side, closing her eyes. A whisper floated through the air. She sat up. "Who is there?" Silence. The wind sighed again, carrying something with it, words she could not make out. She swallowed. "Abeni? Is that you?" Nothing. She lay down again, forcing herself to close her eyes. A soft rustle. The feeling of something shifting in the room. She opened her eyes and turned toward the window. The moon cast a silver light, stretching her shadow across the floor. She frowned. Her shadow did not look right. She sat up slowly. It was too tall. Her heart pounded. She lay down again, pulling the blanket over herself. "Just the wind," she whispered. "Just the wind." But outside, the dogs howled louder. The nights grew colder, but Nkechi felt no warmth. She tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Her belly, once a comforting weight, now moved in ways that made her uneasy. It wasn't just the child's kicks. Something felt unnatural, like something inside her was restless. She pressed a hand over her stomach, feeling movement that did not follow the rhythm of life. Her husband, Obi, stirred beside her. He had heard her mumbling in her sleep again. But this time, something was different. He turned to her and listened closely. The voice coming from her lips was not her own. It was deeper, older, filled with something he could not name. "Nkechi," he whispered. She did not answer. The voice continued, speaking in a language he did not understand. The hairs on his arms rose. He reached out to wake her, but the moment he touched her skin, she gasped and sat upright, eyes wide. "Obi?" she asked, her voice back to normal. Obi swallowed. "You were talking in your sleep." She frowned. "I don't remember." He hesitated before speaking. "It didn't sound like you." Nkechi laughed, shaking her head. "It's just a dream." Obi did not laugh. "You don't sound afraid." "There is nothing to fear," she said. That morning, Baba Jide gathered the villagers. "There was a woman many years ago," he began. "She was strong, like Nkechi. She carried a child that did not belong to this world. The elders warned her, but she laughed. She did not believe. Then one night she walked into the forest alone. She never returned." Baba Jide continued. "They searched for her for days, but she was gone. Only her footprints were found leading into the trees, not a single one leading back." Abeni's fingers curled into fists. She looked at Nkechi, who stood at the edge of the gathering, her face unreadable. "This is foolishness," someone muttered. "No," another voice said. "The signs are there. The dogs, the whispers, the way she—" "Enough!" Nkechi's voice cut through the murmurs. "I am not cursed. I am not possessed. I am a woman carrying my first child, and you all speak as if I am a ghost already." Baba Jide watched her. "Then prove it." Let us watch over you. Nkechi's jaw tightened. I do not need watching. The meeting ended, but the unease remained. Nkechi pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders as she stepped out of Abini's house. The night was quiet. Too quiet. The usual distant sounds of crickets and voices had faded. Abini had begged her to stay until morning, but Nkechi had laughed. I am not a child, she had said. I know my way home. She walked briskly, her sandals tapping against the ground. She quickened her pace, then she heard it. Footsteps, slow, steady, matching hers. She stopped. The sound stopped. She turned sharply. Who is there? Silence. She exhaled, shaking her head. Foolishness, she muttered. She resumed walking. The footsteps returned. Her breath quickened. Abini, if this is your idea of a joke. The wind howled through the trees. She turned again. Nothing. No movement. No shadow. But something was there. She could feel it. Her house was in front of her. She didn't remember reaching it. Her hands trembled as she pushed open the door and stepped inside. Nkechi returned. Home. The door creaked as it opened, and Obi sat up in bed, rubbing his eyes. Something felt strange, like the air had become heavier. Nkechi, he called softly. She stepped inside, moving slowly, almost like she was floating. The dim light flickered, and when Obi saw her face, his chest tightened. Her eyes, darker than before, stared at him, empty yet piercing. She smiled, but it wasn't right. It was too slow, too stretched, like someone trying to remember how to smile. I am home, she said. Obi frowned. Her voice sounded different, like two voices speaking at once. He swallowed hard. You were gone for a long time. Where did you go? Nkechi tilted her head, pausing too long before answering. I walked. The room felt colder. Obi pulled his blanket closer, but it didn't help. Something inside him whispered that this was not the same woman he knew. She turned back to him, her dark eyes filled with something he couldn't name. Then she smiled. But it was not her smile. Baba Jide woke to the sound of the village drums. The steady beat echoed through the night, calling everyone from their homes. He pushed himself up, his old bones aching. Something was wrong. He stepped outside and saw the villagers gathering, their voices hushed, their eyes fixed on the center of the street. There, standing barefoot, was Nkechi. Her hair was loose, her clothes hanging oddly on her frame. Her lips moved, but the words were too soft to hear. She swayed, whispering to the wind. The villagers did not move closer. They only watched, fear tightening their throats. Abeni broke from the crowd. Nkechi, she called out. No response. She stepped closer. Nkechi, talk to me. Still, Nkechi whispered. Abeni reached for her friend's arm. The moment her fingers touched Nkechi's skin, she gasped. It was ice cold. Abeni pulled her hand back. Nkechi, you're freezing. What's happening? The whispering stopped. Nkechi turned her head, slowly, too slowly. Her eyes locked onto Abeni. Then the dogs whimpered, not barked, not growled, whimpered. Their bodies trembled, tails tucked between their legs. The entire village seemed to hold its breath. A shadow moved. It stretched and grew behind Nkechi, darker than the night itself. It had no features, no eyes, no mouth. Just a shape, tall, shifting, watching. Baba Jide gripped his staff. No, he muttered under his breath. Not tonight. The shadow lifted an arm, its fingers stretching unnaturally long. It reached for Nkechi. The moment it touched her, the world shifted. A gust of wind tore through the village. The torches flickered. The ground seemed to tremble. Nkechi's body stiffened. Then she was gone. No scream. No struggle. Just gone. Only her wrapper lay on the ground. Baba Jide bent down, his fingers brushing over the fabric. His eyes darkened. Mama Ozioma's voice trembled. The spirits have taken their due. The villagers stood frozen, staring at the empty space where Nkechi had stood. There were no answers. Days passed, and the village tried to return to normal. The marketplace bustled again, children played, and the elders resumed their evening tales under the great tree. But beneath the surface, an uneasy silence lingered. The people spoke in hushed voices when passing Nkechi's empty home. No one walked alone at night anymore. The dogs, once restless, were now silent. Obi could not stay. He packed his belongings and left before sunrise, without a word to anyone. Some said he went to his mother's village. Others believed he would never return. The house he left behind stood untouched, its doors closed, its windows shut, as if waiting for something or someone to return. Abeni was not at peace. Every day she visited Baba Jide seeking answers. "Where did she go?" she asked. "What happened that night?" The old man shook his head. "Some mysteries should not be disturbed, child, but she was my friend," Abeni whispered. Baba Jide sighed. "That is why you must let her rest." That night, as Abeni lay in bed, a soft breeze drifted through her window. The night was still. Then a whisper curled through the air, light as breath. "Abeni." The voice was familiar. She sat up, her heart pounding. Outside, the wind stirred. The whisper came again, calling her name. See you in the next video. Subscribe now for gripping stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. Like and share to keep African storytelling alive. Turn on notifications. Don't miss a single tale.